afternoon on Tuesday, May the 6th, 2025. And we have an exciting conversation lined up here, and we are here for the second show. Macara, thank you so much for joining me for this second show.
Well, thank you so much for starting this whole thing and continuing it with me. This is so exciting.
Well, you know what? This is just, you know what? It's a very exciting moment because there's a lot to share and a lot to talk about. So we've got our bed is pretty much made here.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's start by talking about the your thoughts on the radical life of Helen Keller. Now, first of all, did you finish it? I'm not quite finished yet, but that's okay.
I am also not finished it yet, and I think for this conversation in particular, it's somewhat important to mention that only because, not even because of the book itself, but just because of, I'm sure, how the nuances of Helen Keller's political activity changed throughout her life. And it's just to say that by not finishing, we haven't quite got the full picture yet, but I think there's a lot here that we can discuss.
There is, and we'll give everybody the rest of the picture next week as well.
That sounds great.
We'll have some fun with it. How's that?
Of course. We always have fun here.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah, so what are your thoughts so far on it? I mean, you just pointed out the political life. I felt that was a very interesting piece of it. That
it's
the
fascinating,
struggles.
Isn't it?
It is.
And of course, you have sort of a lot to consider there in terms of the times in which she's living, the struggles she would have faced as someone with a disability, as a woman. But certainly it's not to put aside her own convictions and her own interpretations on where she sort of stands and where she existed, because that is certainly part of it as well.
Yeah, that it is. But I mean, yes, because of the fact, because it was a different time, and it seemed, and it was a combination of the fact that she was a woman and with a disability. I felt like that would have it would have sort of portrayed things very differently.
Yes, in a lot of ways. We saw them sort of mention education and how even for women that was frowned upon, and how their bodies were literally thought as disabled even without having a, quote unquote recognized disability, just because, as women they couldn't possibly handle the rigors of an education.
And I mean, I mean that was part of it as well. And it's an interesting sort of perspective, like without sort of the political realm of it, of political correctness. But I think where it's sort of interesting how the times were back then.
Yes, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. This is just one sort of piece of, her sort of stance around disability. What do you think of the fact that she advocated but sort of isolated herself from others who were also disabled?
That's a very good question. I felt that, I mean, I wasn't surprised because of the fact that advocating was one thing, but also isolating herself was another thing. Because of the fact that because there are two sort of ways the that that the mind interprets it, and those are both very natural interpretations and perspectives.
That is very true. It all depends on your experience and how and the influence of others around you. I think, like, was so emphasized in this book of, the influence that even Anne Sullivan had, or Alexander Graham Bell, and just these early sort of people in her life kind of influencing her later positions or her later ventures and work.
Yeah, that was a significant piece as well. Yeah. But I mean, it's one thing though, and I think that's it too, right? It has that piece of a famous, like other famous people's sort of perspectives, as well
Yes,
as it has the on then it's the internal stuff that she's sort of playing with. Hey, you know, what's kind of next? What's next?
oh, of course. And I actually really enjoy that it touched on that, because it almost humanizes her in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
because of her fame, as you say, and the fame of those around her. And this was something that was emphasized early on as well in the book, is that she's always just sort of been this figure, right? You don't get a picture of her as a full person with just this idea of, oh, she learned, finger spelling, and there's the whole sort of iconic moment that people always sort of reference back to, of her and Anne Sullivan at the water pump, and how that was kind of the thing that then connected her understanding to language. But no one really knows much beyond that. And she lived this entire life after that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a very good perspective. Yeah, no, I like that piece because, but then again, it also sort of, especially for that time,
Mm-hmm.
you look at the message that was being sent, and we should also point out as well that it was during a time where technology didn't exist in the form that it does today.
Very much, yes.
Right. So that's something important to point out. That's something to point out as well. And where it wasn't like, it wasn't a time where somebody else was doing it, where, of course, Alexander Graham Bell was a figure there in that, in her life,
Mm-hmm.
where it wasn't in a prominent sort of sense where it's like, well, hey, he's doing something. Why don't you do it? Right now, that would be the perspective.
True. And I mean, it kind of was, in the sense that he very much championed, for the deaf community, excuse me. He very much championed oralism and lip reading, as opposed to, say, sign language. So I wonder if it's a combination of things, where I do agree with you that the technology didn't exist, but also the perception of, well, there's technology and there's these resources that specifically are very helpful to these communities, that I think between Belle and then herself were kind of trying to steer away from that and trying to integrate, or not even always integrate, because her perceptions of work were very much isolated, but trying to sort of put less emphasis on, this is how these communities can sort of thrive and be within themselves and have access to language or other tools and things.
Yeah, I agree with you as well on that point because, he was a very prominent figure in that sense, where when it came to the lip reading and everything, yeah.
Hmm. And I think it depends on perception. It
Yeah.
depended on perception then, and it depends on perception now, in terms of, do you lean into the things that sort of distinguish that community, or do you lean into what is considered quote unquote normal
Yeah,
in
there are
terms of
always two sides, aren't
society's?
there?
Yes, and it can be a difficult line to walk no matter what time you're considering.
And no matter what anybody says, too.
That is a big piece of it as well, yes.
Yep. And and I mean, it's all about, yeah, right. But I feel like it was. I mean, I think, to be very honest, I don't know. Originally, before I started reading it, I didn't really know if I didn't really think it'd be my type of book. But
Right.
and I mean, you and I talked about that, but I feel as though whether it is or whether it isn't my type of book, it's really something that I really have a deep appreciation for, from a perspective of knowledge and learning.
Yes, very much.
So, actually, it is one that I actually do enjoy. I actually am really enjoying it.
I found the same. I struggled with a similar thought, in that Helen Keller being the subject was the thing that initially drew my interest, but
Hmm.
upon actually starting and reading it, it's very fascinating in a lot of ways that I wouldn't have necessarily expected. And as you say, it really is something in terms of the knowledge you gain and getting a sense of that time period.
Yeah, and there are a lot of things that and there are a lot of things that, not in a comparison to that time, but in general, there are a lot of things that we may not experience, but to kind of learn about, but to learn about and respect and appreciate the knowledge that you gain, that we gain, that I feel that is the most powerful thing.
It really is. And would you like to maybe expand on what experiences might kind of differ?
If we compare from that time,
Yeah, yeah, like you say, not just considering the time, but experience in general.
um, it's about more. If we sort of look at it, it's about more of how one gets to, or how, in a case of, if we kind of look back at that time, what Helen did to get to, or to get to the spot where she's at, or where
Mm,
she was at, I should say.
right.
But I think if you, but I don't know, like, at what level. I think experiences are always going to be different,
Yes, of course.
and really kind of relating toward where and how the experience level or experience levels are and will be.
Hmm. And I found
That
it in,
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
I found it really interesting how, something like education was said to have given her something, and But even aside from education, just the friendships she gained a little later in life and,
Yeah.
different types of experiences, because education is one thing, but then you have, she was able to do all this traveling, or she was able to even just meeting different people as acquaintances, what that kind of gives you.
Yes.
It can be so enriching
Yeah.
in terms of your life experience.
Big time. Yeah. Because it comes back to the learning and education side of it.
Yes, a lot of it seems to, I think.
Yeah. Because, proving that she could do something or make a difference and
Mm-hmm.
and did it. Right. And and that's why and that's why she has always been and continues to be recognized.
Yes, and I think it's fascinating to see, everyone makes that difference in their own ways, whether that's how they choose to do it or the options that are available to them at a given time in their given situation.
And what would an example of that be? Um,
Well, I think there's just a difference now in terms of, as we sort of discussed earlier, technology, but social media, and you can get such a wider reach and a wider audience in some ways. And I think that for Helen Keller, she would have had to work so much harder in that sense. And everyone still has to work for it to get noticed in this vast landscape of people all trying to have their voices heard. But I think just the whole idea of that would have been so much different in that how did she get her message out there? And of course, there was that autobiography, I believe it was, that she wrote at the age of 23 that I think she was already a widely known figure, but I think that gained her a lot more notoriety.
like, are you like you like you're saying at that age?
At that age, yes, because she would have already been known for, being having gone to the Perkins School and having
Yeah.
learned, oral speech and all these things, and now for attending university as she was at that time. But I think that it's implied that that book almost gave her more of a sense of, oh, yes, this is an option that I have in terms of a professional career, or how was she then going to choose to go forward? I think was a lot of that idea of the what's next that was discussed that she felt.
Yep. Yeah. No. That's also, yeah. That's a very good perspective. Yeah. And yeah. Um.
Is how do you learn what your options are when your experience is only what you've lived? How do you branch out and learn what your options are?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And I mean, do you think if we sort of fast forward
Right.
um to today, do you feel that it's in comparison different for you and I in some capacities?
That's a very interesting question because I think in some capacities, yes, but I think the fundamental question of experience and of how do you branch out and learn is relatively similar. What would your thoughts be?
Yeah, you know what? I sort of, I do agree with that. That fundamentally, and it's different. I mean, fundamentally, it's different.
Okay.
No, fundamentally, and the learning curve could be relatively similar.
Right. But of course, a lot of other things have changed.
Yeah. What comes to mind in terms of what? I mean, a lot has changed, but what comes to your? What are a couple things that come to your mind?
Well, we discussed technology. Of course, there have been leaps and bounds made there, and just the world itself has changed in a lot of ways.
Yep. Yeah.
The things that people emphasize as important have changed somewhat,
Mm-hmm.
depending on where you're at in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And some things that are important for some, or that were considered important, may not be anymore.
Exactly.
Like that. Um, and a lot of what you might see of, and I mean, people who are older than you and I or come from a different time, it's obviously going to be different for them today too because they've had a different level of experience than we have.
Of course. And that shapes their opinions, that shapes their
Yeah,
perceptions.
yeah, it really does.
Not wrongly, because you can't avoid that happening.
No, you can only respect it, but also keep your own system of thinking.
Yes. Keep your own values, and at the same time open yourself up to acknowledging and seeing other perspectives.
Well, that's a big one too. Yeah, yeah, you have to do that.
Of course.
Because I think, and I mean that's the biggest sort of difference, right? Like a perception of somebody older is going to have a different perspective.
Yes, because it comes from different ways of thinking, different
Yeah.
sort of teachings that were in place, I guess.
Yeah.
And as you say, you have to respect it, of course, but keeping your own values and trying to see where maybe things have changed and something is not necessarily thought of in that way is important as well.
Yeah, and also it's not about it's also not really about like agreeing or disagreeing with what their perception and perspectives are, but
No.
but um, it's about attempting to respect what they're saying or what they're feeling.
And understanding where it comes from.
Yeah, the understanding part comes from the time period. piece.
It does, but I think with the respect, understanding is also important.
Yes.
Is what I'm kind of going for.
No, you're right. You're totally right.
Mind you, I think you almost can't have the respect without the understanding. Like
Mm-hmm.
to respect it is to understand that it has come from a different time and a different ways of thinking, different expectations being placed by society.
Yeah, that's a big point and a big one too. And like I think sometimes we all kind of look at things one way and we seem to think that um that it's that it could apply to us, and in some ways it can, but in other ways but in some ways it also cannot.
Oh, you mean in the one way of thinking and seeing things?
Yeah.
How it applies or doesn't? No, it's true. It's very true. And I think that's why the one way mentality sort of doesn't work
No. No, it
because
doesn't.
nothing universally applies
Nope.
for
Nope.
any number of reasons. And I think that is part of what was sort of being mentioned in the book as well
Mm-hmm.
is in the politics you also have everything else that intersects with that in terms of the economy, social influence, education, and none of it, you could think of it one way and you can have someone's political views rooted in one place, but that has so many impacts on every other area.
Yeah. Yeah. It certainly will be, and it's going to be interesting though as well to sort of find out what our perspectives are when we get to the end of the book.
I think so, yes, because it's already so interesting and there's so much to consider that I think that's only going to build.
Yeah. And what else have you been reading this week?
Yes, I was just about to ask the same question, but I have been continuing through Sunrise on the Reaping, getting a little more progress done, but I've been noticeably slowing my pace a little bit on that one. It has nothing to do with the book itself, just more that I'm trying to savor it and not finish it so quickly. It's a great book. I'm really enjoying it. I'm almost at the halfway mark and they've now gotten to the actual Hunger Games component, and this is usually where these books tend to intensify even more. So I'm very curious about where things are going. I unfortunately looked at quite a few spoilers early on.
Oh,
So
you poked around on Goodreads there.
Goodreads and YouTube and just other reviews and things, which this seems to be a thing and has always been something that I have unfortunately done no matter what I'm reading or watching. I would not recommend it.
Oh, I never do
Don't,
that. I never do that.
yeah, no, and it's good that you don't because now I kind of know how things end and I'm hoping that it doesn't take away from the weight of it.
Oh, maybe it does though.
No, it most likely does, and that is unfortunate.
No, but you know what? No, but that's it. You know, if you enjoy it, then that's kind of where you want to kind of go, right?
it's true. You just want to know what happens and get through it. But in that, I should have just continued reading rather than digging around everywhere else.
No, exactly.
And what have you been reading?
I've actually been. You know what? The main things this week has been "Stop Saying You're Fine" by Mel Robbins,
Right.
which is also a very good book. It really what the main theme of the book
Hmm.
is connection and with others and recognizing when to not hit the snooze button and just make the change in your life.
Hmm.
And the third piece, and really those are the two main pieces. I thought there was a third piece, but those are really the two main pieces.
Well, those are both still quite important.
Yeah, and I've also been reading the book, another one for the books panel.
Right. Yes, I've seen you've updated your progress. Are you enjoying that one?
Yes.
That's fantastic. I do have to get on starting that one, but we've got a little time yet.
A couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think I'll be able to make some headway in it before then.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And how would you like to do this for next week? Should we continue on with the same book, or would you like to pick one?
You know what? We can do a little. How about this? We can do a little bit of both.
Okay.
How about this? I'm happy to pick. What I really want to. There are a couple of things that one I want to do. I want to start with Nazim Kadri's book.
All right.
Want to do that. Want to do that one for. We'll start making some progress with that. Not progress, but we'll start in on it and give our perspectives,
Right.
and then we can also, and then we will also, then we will also kind of finish our thoughts on the radical lives of Helen Keller.
That sounds good because I think in finishing it, we'll have more to discuss.
More to discuss as a bit of a, because now we've left people in suspense as to, oh, what do they think of the end of the book?
Yes, that's true. And by the way, I think we should mention just for people's reference, if they're wanting to get that book, is that this one is unfortunately not on Audible. It's only on Sela, but it is still there. And I know I would highly recommend it.
That's right. Yep.
And is the one you're looking to start next week on Audible?
Yes.
Fantastic.
And yes. So, how can they get in touch with us on Discord and Goodreads?
Yes, and we have the website, of course. If you're looking to, you can reply to the emails that you get with the posts. You can comment on the website, and I think I may even post the Discord link again because I'm not sure that too many people were able to get to that last time.
Yes. So, how do they find us there on Discord and on Goodreads?
Yes, so on Goodreads and Discord both, it's just Ali and Macara's books. The handle is the same as the show.
There you go. And there we go. And there are always some good sort of good topics and good books to read.
Absolutely. Oh, and we have the YouTube channel as well now.
Oh yes, that's right. And where's that? What's the handle for that?
The same as everything else and the show, Ali and Macara's books.
Perfect. Sounds good. So yes, and so check us out. We are always around. We're always open for a chat.
Absolutely. We'd definitely love to hear people's thoughts.
Yes, and we will be back next week. So stay tuned for more great programming. Thank you so much, Macara, for joining me.
Thank you.